The boxes were stacked on the sidewalk in the rain. 14 of them, sealed with tape that was already starting to lift at the corners from the wet. A garbage bag tied at the top with a red twist tie. A child's backpack, purple, with a yellow lightning bolt on the front, propped against the biggest box like it had been set there carefully. Like someone had taken a moment even in the worst of it to make sure one specific thing did not get rained on. The woman sitting on the bottom step of the building she no longer lived in had a 6-year-old pressed against her side under one arm and a phone against her ear with the other hand, and she was not crying. She had already done the crying. Her face had gone past that into something quieter and harder. The look of a person who has run all the calculations and found that none of them work. She had been sitting there for 47 minutes. She had called 4 numbers from 4 contacts in her phone and reached 2 voicemails and 2 people who were sorry, who were so sorry, but who could not. The street was wet and cold, and the cars that passed did not slow down. Then the motorcycle pulled to the curb. What happened next would not fix everything that week had broken, but it would start something that the woman on those steps had stopped believing was still possible. That people could still surprise you. That a stranger could look at a stack of boxes in the rain and decide that they were his problem too. Millbrook, Tennessee sits on the western edge of the Cumberland Plateau, far enough from Nashville that it does not appear in any of the articles about Tennessee's growth, and close enough that it feels the pressure of that growth without receiving any of its benefits. The downtown is 6 blocks of brick storefronts, half of them occupied, and the residential streets running off it are a mix of older rentals and houses that families have owned for 30 or 40 years. The kind of street where you know your neighbor's car by sound and the mail carrier knows your name. The rain that Tuesday evening in November came in off the plateau in waves, light for a minute, and then suddenly hard, and the streetlights on Calder Street made the puddles on the sidewalk glow orange. The elm trees that lined the block had gone mostly bare, and their wet black branches made a ceiling of angles above the parked cars and the sidewalk. A dog barked once from somewhere behind a fence and went quiet. The street smelled the way streets smell after days of rain, leaf rot, and cold asphalt, and the particular exhausted clean of water that has been falling too long. The building at 114 Calder was 3 stories, built in 1962, with a buzzer panel by the front door, and 6 units, and a landlord named Gerald Stroud, who owned 4 properties in Millbrook, and managed them with the particular attention of a man who cared deeply about what was owed to him, and very little about what he owed in return. He had given the notice on a Friday. By the terms of the lease, he was entitled to do that, technically, for a lease violation that he had chosen to enforce technically, in the way that people who have decided they want something done will always find the technical grounds to do it. The woman on the steps could have contested it. She had not had the hours. She had also, as of the Monday before, not had the job. The 2 things together, the termination notice from the distribution center where she had worked second shift for 4 years, and Gerald Stroud's eviction notice, which arrived in her mailbox the following morning as though the universe had decided that one blow was not instructive enough, had collapsed the architecture of a life she had built carefully and maintained by herself, with nothing to spare and no margin for exactly this. Rana Vasquez was 34 years old. She had been in Millbrook for 6 years, long enough that her daughter Sophia knew the name of every dog on the block, and had opinions about which teacher at Millbrook Elementary was the fairest. She had a savings account with $847 in it, which was more than she'd had at several points in her life and not enough for a deposit on a new place, plus first month's rent, plus the gap before the first paycheck from whatever job came next. She had a sister in Cookville, 80 miles east, who was also raising a child alone, and did not have the floor space. She had a friend named Donna who had said the couch was hers for a week, maybe 2. She had 14 boxes on a sidewalk in the rain, and a daughter who had not asked a single question since they came downstairs, because Sofia Vasquez was 6 years old, and already old enough to understand that some moments required being very still and very quiet. The purple backpack was Sofia's. Reina had packed it herself. She had made sure the stuffed rabbit was in the front pocket. Reina had her phone to her ear for the 4th time when the motorcycle pulled up. She registered it the way you register most things when you are in the middle of something, peripherally, without full attention. The engine sound changed as it slowed. She heard the kickstand go down. She did not look up until the footsteps stopped in front of her, and even then, she looked up slowly, because she had reached the point where she was not sure what new thing the evening intended to offer, and was not certain she had the capacity for it. The man standing in the rain in front of her was not small. He was wearing a black riding jacket with the collar turned up, and his hair was wet, and his beard had rain in it, and he was holding his helmet under one arm. He was looking at the boxes, not at her. His face was the kind of face that had been outdoors for most of its life, tanned in the way that does not fade in November, with lines at the corners of his eyes from squinting into the wind. He looked at the boxes the way a man looks at a problem he is already mentally taking apart. His name was Cal Briggs. He was 53 years old, out of Murfreesboro, and he had been on his way south toward his sister's place in Pulaski when the rear tire started losing pressure somewhere on Route 70, and he had nursed the bike off the highway and into the first neighborhood that appeared, which had been this one. He had a slow leak in the rear. A nail, he thought, or road debris, and the tire was soft enough now that he would not be riding it until it was fixed. He had been walking the bike along the street looking for a lit porch or an open garage when he turned onto Calder and saw the boxes. He was supposed to be in Pulaski by 9. He had not been to see his sister since July, and she had made dinner. He looked at the boxes. He looked at the child pressed against the woman's side, the purple backpack. He did not make a calculation. He just stopped. "Ma'am," he said. Reina took the phone from her ear. She looked at him. "You need somewhere to put those," he said. It was not a question. Before we get to what Reina Vasquez said to the man with rain in his beard, hit subscribe and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this one travels. Every city, every state, anywhere in the world you're watching from right now. Drop it below. I read every single one. Now, back to Calder Street. Back to Reina and the boxes in the rain, because what Cal Briggs did next would start something that Gerald Stroud, in his 4 properties and his careful calculations, was not prepared for at all. Reina Vasquez had been taking care of herself since she was 19, which meant she had been declining help from strangers for 15 years, on the basis that help from strangers was rarely free, and the cost was rarely stated up front. She had learned this the hard way, more than once, and she had built her life on the understanding that the only account she could fully trust was the one she controlled herself. She looked at Cal Briggs in the rain for 3 seconds. "I don't know you," she said. "No, ma'am," he said. "I don't have anywhere to put them." "What about tonight?" She said nothing. Tonight was Donna's couch, the purple backpack, whatever fit in the car. The boxes could not come to Donna's. The boxes would have to stay somewhere. She had not yet found the end of that sentence. "I've got a truck," Cal said. "My sister's got a place in Pulaski. I can put them in storage. Or I can find somewhere here. What do you need?" He said it the way you say a thing when you already know you are doing it, and the question is only logistics. Reina looked at him for a long time. Sophia had turned her face toward the man and was watching him with the particular focused attention of a child who has decided to evaluate someone thoroughly before committing to an opinion. "Your tire's flat," Sophia said. Cal looked at her. "It is," he said. "You can't ride it." "No," he said. "So you're stuck too," Sophia said. Cal Briggs looked at the 6-year-old who had just described the situation with more precision than most adults would have managed, and something in his face shifted. Not a smile, not quite, but the thing that comes before one. "I suppose we both are," he said. Gerald Stroud arrived at 114 Calder Street at 6:47 in the evening, 40 minutes after he had said he would arrive, which was consistent with his general practice of making people wait as a demonstration that their time was worth less than his. He drove a silver Lexus SUV with a university parking permit in the corner of the windshield that he had not attended the university to earn. It had come with the purchase of a parking lease he used as an investment. He was 58, with the particular confident softness of a man who had never had to be physically intimidating, because money had always been intimidating enough on his behalf. He had come to confirm that the unit was vacated, and to change the lock, and to document the condition for the deposit dispute he had already decided he was going to initiate. He had taken photographs of the unit the previous summer with the intention of using them for exactly this, and what those photographs showed was largely normal wear that he intended to describe in different terms. He had done this before. He had an attorney who had done this with him, twice, and the tenants had not had the resources to respond. He parked the Lexus in front of the building and got out and looked at the boxes on the sidewalk, and then at the man sitting on the front steps with his riding jacket and his phone out, clearly not from Millbrook, and at the woman and child who were inside Cal's truck with the heat running because Cal had made them get in out of the rain 20 minutes ago and had not accepted an argument about it. Gerald Stroud did not look at Cal Briggs long. He dismissed him in the same moment he assessed him. A biker, irrelevant, passing through. He walked toward the truck. "Miss Vasquez," he said, "the unit needs to be cleared by 7. Raina's window went down 2 inches. "It's cleared," she said. "I need to inspect. You have keys." Gerald Stroud's jaw moved slightly, the way a jaw moves when a person is calculating how much inconvenience they are willing to perform in front of a witness. "I also need the second set of keys back," he said. "And I want to discuss the condition of the bathroom tile." Raina looked at him through the 2-inch gap. "You said 3 days," she said. "It's been 9. The lease specifies—" "I know what the lease specifies," Raina said. "I read it." She said it flatly, without heat, which was more effective than heat would have been. Gerald Stroud was accustomed to distress. He was not accustomed to flat. He looked at Cal Briggs, who had not moved from the steps. "And who are you?" he said. Cal Briggs looked up from his phone. "Passing through," he said. Gerald Stroud went inside to inspect the unit, and Cal Briggs used the time to make 3 calls. The first was to his sister in Pulaski, who said, "Don't be an idiot, and of course, and let me know what you need." The second was to a man named Roy Tatum, who ran a storage facility on Route 70 east of Millbrook, and who owed Cal a favor from 2019 that Cal had not yet collected. The third was to a number he had found during the first call while his sister was talking, while he was already looking. He was still on the third call when Gerald Stroud came back outside. Gerald Stroud stood on the sidewalk in the rain and held up a set of keys. "There are scratches on the bathroom tile consistent with improper cleaning products," he said. "I'm going to need to assess the cost of replacement and deduct from the deposit. I'm also concerned about the wall behind the stove." Raina had gotten out of the truck. She was standing on the sidewalk with her arms crossed, and Sophia had stayed in the truck with the door cracked because Raina had quietly told her to stay, and Sophia, who understood her mother's quiet voice, had stayed. "Those scratches were there when I moved in," Raina said. "I don't have documentation of that." "I have photographs," Raina said. "From the day I moved in, I sent them to you by email. September 14th, 4 years ago." Gerald Stroud went still. "I'm sure if you still have that email account," Raina said, "you still have those photographs." Gerald Stroud looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Cal Briggs, who had lowered his phone and was watching the conversation with the particular focused stillness of someone who has decided not to speak yet. Cal set his phone down on the step beside him. He stood up. He was not as tall as Gerald Stroud had initially estimated. He was taller. He did not walk toward Stroud. He simply stood, and the standing itself changed the composition of the sidewalk. "She's got photos," Cal said. "You've got the email. Sounds like the deposit comes back whole." Gerald Stroud's eyes moved between the two of them. "That's not how this works," he said. His voice had changed, just slightly, just enough that the change was audible. "How does it work?" Cal said. Gerald Stroud said something about the lease terms and the assessment process, and the timeline for deposit returns under Tennessee statute. He said it in the smooth, unrushed way of a man who has said it before and found that people without lawyers do not know how to respond to it. He said it while looking at Raina and not at Cal, which was a mistake, because Cal Briggs had grown up in a family that had been through a landlord dispute in 1987 that cost his mother 8 months of fighting, and he had paid enough attention to know exactly what a man using the word statute to avoid the word theft sounded like. He did not answer the statute speech. He picked up his phone and finished the third call. He didn't shout. He didn't move from the steps. He put the phone in his pocket and looked at Gerald Stroud and said 5 words. "Storage is covered," he said. "Tonight." Then he looked at Raina. "Roy's got a unit on Route 70, paid through March. I'll get the truck." Raina looked at him. "You don't know me," she said. "I know the situation," he said. She was quiet for a long time. The rain came down, and the orange streetlight made the puddles glow, and Gerald Stroud stood on the sidewalk between them with his silver Lexus behind him and his deposit dispute and his 4 properties, and the weight of all his careful calculations. "Why?" Raina said. Cal Briggs thought about it for a moment, which she had not expected. She had expected a deflection, a shrug, a version of its nothing. "Because my mom sat on steps like these once," he said. "And nobody stopped." Gerald Stroud left at 7:12. He did not get what he came for. He got his keys and a photograph of Raina's email, timestamped September 14th, 4 years ago, that Cal had helped her find and print at the gas station on Route 70 while Roy Tatum opened the storage unit. The deposit dispute died before it started. Gerald Stroud got back into the silver Lexus and pulled away from the curb and drove back to wherever it was that men like him went when the evening stopped cooperating and the street was quieter without him. What he did not know, and would not know until 4 days later, was that Cal Briggs's third phone call had been to a woman named Diane Aldridge, who ran a tenant advocacy program out of the legal aid office in Murfreesboro, who Cal had met 3 years ago at a fundraiser his chapter helped organize, and who had spent the following 4 days reviewing Raina Vasquez's lease, her email correspondence with Gerald Stroud, and the documented histories of Gerald Stroud's other 3 properties, and who had found, in that review, a pattern that the State Housing Board found relevant enough to open a formal inquiry. Gerald Stroud's 4 properties were audited in January. 2 of his 3 other former tenants contacted Diane Aldridge within the week. But that came later. What happened that Tuesday night on Calder Street was smaller and more specific and more important than any of what came after, because what came after grew from it the way things grow from small specific acts of human decency. Cal's sister drove up from Pulaski with her husband's pickup, and they loaded the 14 boxes from the sidewalk in 40 minutes. Raina and Cal and his sister Tammy and Tammy's husband Pete. And Sophia sat in the truck and held the purple backpack in her lap and watched through the window with a stuffed rabbit pressed against her chest. They put the boxes in Roy Tatum's unit, and Roy gave Raina the combination and shook her hand and told her there was no rush, meaning it. Tammy had been on the phone while they loaded. She had a friend who managed the front desk at the Cumberland Valley Medical Group in Millbrook, and who had said that morning that the medical records position was posted and had not been filled, and paid $3 more per hour than the distribution center, and had daytime hours. She gave Raina the number before they left. Cal Briggs got his tire patched at a shop on Route 70 the next morning, and was in Pulaski by noon, a day late, and his sister had kept the dinner in the refrigerator and reheated it without comment. They sat at her kitchen table, and she asked him how the detour went, and he told her about the boxes on the sidewalk, and the woman who had documented her own move-in with photographs she had kept for 4 years, just in case, which was the detail that stayed with him. He told his sister. She already knew how to fight. She just needed someone to stop the clock for one night, so she had time to do it. Sofia Vasquez started first grade at Millbrook Elementary in September of the following year, which was a different school year than the one that had started with the boxes on the sidewalk. Raina was working daytime hours by then. The stuffed rabbit lived on Sophia's bed, and the purple backpack had been replaced with a green one, because Sophia had decided at some point between November and September that green was better, which is the kind of decision a child makes when the rest of the decisions are no longer being made for her. Raina did not know Cal Briggs's last name for 6 weeks. She found it when she sent a card to the address he had written on a piece of storage paperwork, and the card said, "Thank you for stopping. Most people don't." She did not say more than that, because there was nothing more that needed saying. Cal Briggs kept the card in the cup holder of his truck for the better part of a year. Some people drive past the boxes on the sidewalk. They have things to do. They have places they are supposed to be. They have already calculated that stopping will cost them something. Time, money, the simple forward motion of a life that works, mostly if you keep moving. Cal Briggs had a flat tire and a sister waiting, and a dinner going cold on a table 80 miles south, and he stopped anyway, because his mother had sat on steps like those once, and nobody had stopped, and he had decided somewhere in the years between that night and this one that the least a person could do was not repeat the same mistake the world had already made enough times. That is not a complicated thing. It is, in the end, a very simple thing. It just requires someone willing to do it. If this story reached you, if you believe that one person stopping can change the whole shape of what comes next, share it with someone who needs to remember that decency still exists. Subscribe so you never miss the next story. And drop a comment below. Have you ever had a stranger stop when no one else did? Or been the one who stopped? Tell me about it. I read every single one.